Hey, I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be recommending some music that was new to me in the first 3 months of 2025. And actually, this is my first video on this channel. This is something that kind of is going to replace what I used to use a blog for, which was to share recommendations across music, movies, books, kind of all these different mediums that I enjoy seeking out new content in. I really do enjoy just looking for lots of new music, new movies, new books that I am enjoying, and then I find that I like sharing those recommendations with others. So this is just a casual platform for me to be able to share those recommendations. Here specifically, I basically have been over the last 3 months as I listen to new music, trying to kind of bookmark notable songs kind of into a playlist. And I actually have that playlist linked in the description below, and that maybe is the main point of this video is, hey, there's a playlist of kind of songs that I thought were, notable in my new music listening in the last 3 months. Check it out. Listen to it. Skip songs that, clearly aren't your style. Maybe you'll find something new. But in this video, I'll try to at least talk briefly about kind of the different albums that are represented and just give my brief thoughts on them. I will say that I kind of am in a weird pattern of I've started kind of deep diving years of music. This is something I kind of started just about a year or so ago. And by deep diving, I just mean like seeking out to try to listen to, around 100 albums from that year in an effort to find ones that may be new favorites for myself. And my kind of pattern that I'm in is that I'm deep diving the current year, so 2025, but then I'm also like retroactively deep diving years because I didn't do this for a lot of these other years. And there's so much music out there that I want to see what maybe I missed. And so whereas last year I was doing 2024 and deep diving 2023, I've like expanded out to now I'm 2025 and 2022. And so there's a lot on this list that's going to fall in those 2 years only because probably 90% plus of my new music listening has been albums from those 2 years. So it's going to be heavily weighted that way. But let's go ahead and just jump in and talk about some of the albums that I listened to that I included some songs off of in the playlist below. So the first one, I last year, 2024, had listened to Jack White's new release, No Name. Sorry, really enjoyed No Name. And I hadn't really listened to much of his stuff outside of knowing some of his hits with the White Stripes. But No Name really impressed me and has been in my rotation, and I've enjoyed it. So naturally, I want to kind of explore some of his other solo works, and there's a couple of them, actually, that came out in 2022. Fear of the Dawn and Entering Heaven Alive, which I think are both kind of like the output of pandemic lockdown creative time. So kind of two different albums came out this year. And I enjoyed both of them. So the first one here is Fear of the Dawn. This one is definitely a little bit more heavier rocker, kind of more what you would expect from Jack White, though he's exploring a lot of interesting sounds here. Like they're just the types of distortion he's using and things. There's just a lot more varied kind of experimental sounds in this album, I think, compared to even No Name is a little bit more straightforward garage rock kind of style. There's a little bit more eclecticism, is that a word, on this album. But still a lot of what you would expect from him as far as kind of hooks and just kind of straightforward rocking. And I really enjoyed this. I think there's a lot of cool sounds on it, some cool tracks. So I think it's definitely worth a listen. Now, his other 2022 album, Entering Heaven Alive, is a very different feel. It's almost like he had all this output from 2022 and he kind of put the kind of heavier upbeat stuff on the first one. And this is kind of the more acoustic, laid back, but still very much his style, right? Like I wouldn't describe most of his style as particularly laid back. And this one I actually saw was more lowly rated, and I think that's largely because people go to Jack White wanting the distortion. They want those electric guitars, and this has less of it, but I still really enjoyed Entering Heaven Alive. I think his style, kind of experimental rock style, translates well to kind of this stripped back set. So I thought this one was quite good as well. So two good entries here from Jack White that I've listened to recently, and I'm definitely excited to get into some of his older stuff as well. My next one here is a new to me artist. This is Madison Cunningham. She's a singer-songwriter, kind of indie pop rock, maybe. And I feel like this is a hard genre. I listen to a lot of kind of, singer-songwriter, and like it is hard to separate yourself. There's a lot of stuff you listen to that's like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to come back to it. This one I actually found what kind of found a way to separate itself. The opening song, All I've Ever Known, it kind of sets the tone with this. It's got kind of driving percussion and guitar arpeggios, and it's got this cool vibe. And I was kind of expecting like, okay, this is how the album is going to continue. And I actually found you get to song 2, Hospital, and it kind of goes in a different direction. It's got this kind of electric guitar hook riff, and it's a little bit more edgy. So very different feel in the first 2 songs. And I found that to kind of be a refreshing theme throughout the album is that, just she kind of works her style in different ways. And I found sometimes these types of albums can kind of start to bleed together, right? Especially on a first listen, you're like, man, they all sounded similar. Like maybe on a few listens, it'll start to differentiate a little bit more. This one I even found on the first listen, there was a lot of kind of just variation in the styles on the songs. And so I found this one to be pretty good. I definitely is a new artist that I'm going to be keeping an eye on after listening to this one. My third album here, or I guess fourth album, I mentioned 2 for Jack White, is an artist I've been aware of for a while. I think I'd listened to a couple songs from him way back, but never really dug into his stuff. But I'm now listening to his 2022 album, so one of his much newer things, so maybe an odd entry point for this artist. But this is Andrew Bird. And I guess I feel like there might be a theme on our 2022 albums that it's a lot of these artists that came out of, pandemic lockdown and now that's when the songs were being written. And this particular album is called Inside Problems, which I think is a reference to that. And Andrew Bird, he's a very kind of virtuistic violin player, singer. And it's a very kind of stripped back, kind of pop rock, chamber pop kind of feel, very strings led, lush instrumentation, but pretty laid back. Like it's pretty subdued, and nice hooks. His vocals are pretty kind of relaxed and tame, which sometimes can be hard. Like that, you really need the songwriting to carry it when you're kind of compressing those dynamics a little bit more. But I do feel like he's a very good songwriter, and there's a lot of good songwriting on this album. And I will say, while the dynamics are a little bit more reserved, there's still some nice swells to some, strings and it still swells to some nice highs, even if they're reaching them in a little different way, than maybe other albums might. But I actually found that there was a lot on here that was kind of groovy. It's kind of sparse, but still just lots of kind of catchy hooks, and good instrumentation, really clean production. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was worth a listen. The next one is one that actually the first time I listened to it, my impression was not that great. And that's largely because it kind of falls at least partially within kind of the shoegaze genre, a lot fuzzier sound. And that tends to not be a genre I am drawn to as much. I find that the fuzzy or getting into like noise rock starts to just not be my preference for kind of hearing the parts in my own personal enjoyment. But this is kind of, I'd say shoegaze kind of with a jingle pop rock kind of thing. This is the album Blue Rev by Alvvays. And this was my introduction to this band. And it was really on listening to it I think it was the second listen, on kind of some nicer headphones, that the mix really kind of hit better for me, and kind of realized that like there is a little bit of a shoegazy feel, but it's not quite as fuzzy or noisy as a lot of albums in that genre that maybe have turned me off. And I found that I was like really actually picking out the parts better, and it was achieving more what I think a lot of people like about shoegaze, which is kind of this soundscape, right? That you really kind of are immersing yourself into. And I kind of found that here in a way that worked for me. And so this one has been a real grower for me. Really well written, kind of catchy jangle pop tunes. After the Earthquake is a notable song here that I think is just really strong and catchy and interesting. And so this is one, I could see this one going up for me. Like each listen, it is. And I think that also, I mean, like any album, the more you're familiar with the songs, it kind of lets it hit. It can often hit better because there's that expectation of you kind of know what's coming. And I think that serves well with this kind of style that's maybe a little bit more noisy. At least for me, it helps to kind of like already know the melodies and things so that I'm not working to pick those things out. But yeah, this is one I am interested to, it looks like a lot, their previous albums are also quite highly rated. So I'm definitely going to be going back in their discography. But one that's maybe a little bit pushing out a genre for what I normally enjoy. But I thought it was pretty good. Next up, this list is definitely a little heavier towards kind of maybe more singer-songwriter, folk, acoustic-driven stuff for whatever reason. I guess I've listened to more of those albums. This is the album You Belong There by Daniel Rossen, who I believe was in the band Grizzly Bear. I could be completely off there, going off my memory. But this is a very... So it's singer-songwriter, acoustic-driven, but very moody, very I would say very progressive. Like it's got a lot of interesting progressions and strumming patterns and finger picking and stuff. Honestly, even gets to the point of being almost a little avant-garde at times, with how it kind of pushes the comfortability of the listener. But there's some really cool stuff here. Some cool sounds going on. Some, it's got backing strings with the acoustic that kind of make these more lush arrangements. But yeah, it's got a very it's got this little bit darker feel. And I will say that like on a first, second listen, even at this point where I've listened to it a few times, the songs do bleed together a little bit for me. Like the style is fairly consistent. And that's something that, I think will continue to get better as I listen to it more, as I like remember kind of the differentiations of the songs. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how this one holds for me. Because sometimes that ends up being the downfall of certain albums, is I just find like, man, I like some of this, but I don't necessarily want, 40 minutes of it. Doesn't do enough in individual songs to like keep me hooked in. But first impressions, I do like a lot of what's going on here. There's a few tracks especially that I thought were pretty good. My next one is probably the least known artist on the list. I think this is just some guy in like the UK that's self-recording all this stuff in his room. Like, I think this is a very low budget indie project. This is the band Gumshoes, with the album Bugs Forever. And I discovered Gumshoes with his album last year, Cacophony, only because I noticed it on the Rate Your Music charts. And he has the good strategy of he releases his albums, at least he has for the last few years, right at the beginning of the year, which bodes well for the charts. Like, because anybody that is looking at the like yearly charts, well, at the beginning of the year, there's so many fewer albums, so he pops up on there. So that's how I found Cacophony, and I really liked Cacophony. It really grew on me. I think this would be a polarizing one, because I think some people listen to this and will either be very put off by his vocal style or just not dig in the kind of piano rock pop. It's very kind of light and fun, very sugary, I would say. But it has worked for me, and that Cacophony album has really grown on me. I tell you, he just can write some earworm hooks. There are so many little hooks that just get stuck in your head that are just so satisfying to listen to, that even in a song where it's kind of just like repeating that hook, it's just like enjoyable to listen to because the hook is really good. And Bugs Forever really continues that trend. Lots of kind of what I've come to expect from Gumshoes. There's some really fun tracks on here. I don't think it quite... Now, it's hard to say because I've listened to Cacophony so much more. It doesn't feel like it quite reaches Cacophony for me, but it's not far behind. And there's a few songs on here especially that are right up there with some of my favorites off of Cacophony. So, if you want just fun, kind of piano-driven, it's hard to describe, but they're very just light and fun songs, not taking themselves too seriously. And as long as the vocals don't put you off, it may be a fun one that you might enjoy. I had never listened to the band Spoon until recently. And this is another example of me being introduced with one of their much later albums because of how I'm doing this by year. But I listened to Lucifer on the Sofa by Spoon. And this was an album that I thought was all right, but it always felt like it was like almost good. Like it was so close to being what I maybe wanted it to be, but it just, didn't find it enough that I didn't really pull it into my rotation. And I don't think it's really what I'm going to be coming back to. That said, there's some good tracks off this, and especially the track Wild. It's a pretty straightforward track. There's not a lot here that's innovative, but it's catchy, and it's got some nice layering, kind of as this pulsing driving guitar, and it kind of layers in through the song. Really kind of works nicely with the way the chorus comes in. So I find it to be kind of a catchy song that I included in the playlist. And my last one here, again, is a one that from the genre I wasn't really expecting to enjoy much. This is People Watching by Sam Fender, which is classified kind of under the Heartland rock label. I haven't listened to much like Bruce Springsteen, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of like a Heartland rock. Kind of these anthemic rock anthems, for lack of for another descriptor. And it very much is what this is. Like from the opening track, you just feel the style that's here. And it's not one that I normally am drawn to. Like it's one of those things that's kind of fine for me. But I will say, especially the opening track, the title track, People Watching, I keep kind of coming back to it, and it just sounds good. Like it's got a nice sound to it, and the kind of highs of the vocals in the chorus that I found myself enjoying going back to it. I don't think it's really an album that I'm going to be going back to a lot of the rest of it. Even though I felt like it was solid all the way through. For me so far, People Watching is kind of the one track I've pulled out that has kind of stayed in rotation for me, but I could see some people really, really clicking with this album. If that's a genre that you maybe are have a little bit more of an appetite for than I do. I think it's really well done, and I think it's very consistent. So listen to People Watching. If you like that song, it's definitely worth checking out the rest of the album as well. And there you have it. There's what I have for Q1 of 2025. I'll always be listening to more new music. I plan on doing this type of video quarterly for each 3 months and having an accompanying playlist with it. Always open to any recommendations if you want to leave those in the comments. If you like talking about music or movies or books, some of these things, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm planning on pushing out more videos on these topics, and happy listening.